welcome into another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That's not Alan Saunders. Second day in a row, it is Zachary Smith and no Alan Saunders. Yesterday we had Derek Bell, which means today you're getting the man, the myth, the legend, Nick Farabaugh. What's going on, pal?
What's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm not sick, which is more than you can say. So I appreciate you got through it for me here today for this episode. I know the people will be happy to see you. Been a little bit, so we got some interesting stuff to talk about. A lot of it is going to be, I would say, free agency or potential free agency related. The first thing I want to talk about, Nick, let's just jump right into it. Right before we started recording, Miami informing Jerome Baker that he will be released kind of strengthens this free agent inside linebacker market a little bit. And we haven't talked about that a lot at all for the Steelers. You know, Alan and I touched on the draft class a little bit. You know, you got Junior Colson, you got Edgerrin Cooper, Peyton Wilson I really liked, and there's a couple other guys down there too, but we haven't really talked about the idea of them dipping into free agency for this a ton. And Jerome Baker, a guy that the Steelers had shown interest in, you know, pre-draft when he was coming out of Ohio State. Do you see a fit there? Could this one make sense?
Yeah, I think it does. And I also think it's not like a case of a player getting cut that's just washed, right? Like, it's not like a Miles Jack situation where even though he was only like 26, it was clear he was like on the downturn of his career. Like, Jerome Baker was decent last year. So I think this is actually one of those signings where you look at and say, what does Baker bring to the table? He can hit well. He's a decent coverage linebacker. He was just on a very, very big price tag. So really, he just wasn't worth that contract. But he's a solid player. So if Cole Holcomb comes back at, you know, a decent level, you pair him with E-Rob and Baker, I think they play off each other's strengths. I think Jerome Baker can do what Quan Alexander did last year and play a lot, play 3 downs. That could be your 3-down linebacker, and it takes the stress off inside linebacker in the draft, which is tough because it's a bad inside linebacker class in the draft. Yes, at some point they need to draft a young one, but I don't know, Smitty. I think pretty clearly the more I look at it, the more needs probably are going to get addressed through the draft, like corner, tackle.
Sure.
Receiver.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat as you. I've mentioned the idea of trying to hit free agency for safety and linebacker and kind of kicking the can down the road in terms of a long-term solution there, especially at linebacker. Like if somebody falls into your lap at safety, I know you're really high on DTR or DTD out of Texas Tech. I'm a fan of him too, especially where he could potentially go. You know, if you're talking about like a 6th, 7th round, but he probably shot up with the combine that he had. But yeah, you know, I mean, if there's a guy that falls into your lap, sure. But in terms of like spending a high draft pick on either of those 2 spots, I wouldn't do it. I like the idea of kind of going the same route that they had last year in terms of the off-ball linebacker, where, you know, you bring in some vets and they mesh well. It's a shame that those guys got hurt because they were starting to play really good football last year. They seemed to find a really good rotation between you know, Holcomb, Quan, Annie Landon. So, yeah, I think Jerome Baker would definitely be an interesting addition. There's some other guys out there too. And actually, I just mentioned safety, and we can just hit one of these questions now because it's not even a question. They literally just said a name. But Xavier McKinney is not going to be a tag of any sort. 24 years old, going to hit the open market. Steelers certainly have the need for a safety, but does Xavier McKinney fit the bill? You know, they already have Minkah Fitzpatrick. Do you think that he kind of clashes with what he does? Could there be room for both of them on this roster? Another guy that played that star position at Alabama under Nick Saban.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, I look at a guy in free agency to me that makes a lot of sense, and I'll say it. It's Julian Blackmon. Like, he makes a lot of sense to me, Zach. Like, you look at Blackmon played strong last year, like played over 50% of his snaps strong, but it played free and slot before that. There's a lot of interesting names there on the market. I mean, Jamal Adams is now out there. Quandre Diggs is now out there. Cam Curl is out there. Jordan Whitehead is out there. You could reunite Rel and Minka. Like, you could do so many different things. There's so many good safeties. I didn't even name all of them. It's a real bad safety draft class, too. We talked about that a little bit as well. It's a bad safety, bad linebacker draft class. So, like, if this isn't addressed in free agency, I have questions. Makes no sense for it not to be. So, I look at, you know, those guys, and I would want to actually plop them in with Minkah just because I want Minkah on the back end, right? I want Minkah at free safety rather than Minkah down in the box, down as a slot corner as much as he was. Yeah, he can do that, but he was playing down there 90 to 95% of the time last year. And what makes Minka so good is you can move him around, use his ball hawking capabilities, and force teams to not know where he is before the snaps. So I really hope we see Minka start to move back around. And I think there's just so many options in free agency to do that. And then in linebacker, too, we talk about Baker and all that. That is a position that could allow them to do that because they need somebody at slot corner this year that can actually defend the run. That's something they need.
And I didn't know if you're going to add that second part, defend the run. So maybe this guy doesn't fit the bill for that. But Darious Williams, also released in Jacksonville, was a very productive player for them just as recently as last year. I don't think that's another case where you mentioned with Jerome Baker, where it's a good player getting cut. Now, maybe they feel like this is the right time to do it, as opposed to obviously paying him next year, getting up there in age. Who knows what the situation is, but do you see a fit there or no? Because I had a conversation with somebody on Twitter. They didn't like they said it wasn't a good scheme fit. He's played in 3 different defenses, though, so he's seen a ton of different coverages. But what's your take on Darious?
Heavy zone corner, so it is a weird fit. It's very similar to like, okay, how does Patrick Peterson fit in this thing, right? But the issue
Sure,
is
yeah.
Williams only plays outside. So he doesn't play inside, which is weird. He's 5'9", but he doesn't really play much in the slot. He's 30. I mean, I like the player. I think he's good, but it is weird unless you're going to go to a full, zone scheme. But it's pretty clearly the Steelers aren't. I mean, you don't draft Joey Porter Jr., Corey Trice, bring in Darius Rush if you're not going to do that.
Yeah.
And the corner class is too darn good not to dip into it. It's just too good. I don't care if you sign Darious Williams. I don't care if you sign anybody. If you sign anyone in free agency, you're still going to dip into it. It's just that good, right? It's one of those classes where you feel like you should take a bite of the apple. Like the Steelers didn't necessarily need a tight end last year. They took a bite of that apple anyways because Darnell Washington was there and the value was incredible. So at some point, that guy is going to be there. Williams, is a guy that could fit there, but he doesn't really fit what I feel like they're looking for right now. Again, only 5'9". Doesn't really play.
You don't think he could play inside? You don't think he could play inside in this scheme?
He could. He's just never done it.
Well, they tried to do it in Jacksonville, but they didn't have another guy to play outside. So then he,
he's It's interesting. You're projecting at that point, but at that point, why not just go sign Kenny Moore? Why not go sign a slot? I don't know. Draft Mike Sanders still.
And see the thing is, you're right, because I really can't make the case for Darious Williams and not Kenny Moore, because my issue with Kenny Moore when having that conversation with people was because of the heavy zone stuff. But
yes,
you're talking about So
to me, it is you could, but the slot stuff, he's very sparing playing the slot. He's only played 30 snaps on the slot this past year. They may have tried it before, but he didn't do it a ton. He did play a lot of the slot in 22. He played 480 snaps there. So he can do it. It's just, is he going to be better even there when he has played wide more? They tried to play him in the slot in 22. He was solid there, but has basically played outside corner his whole time in LA more than he has in the slot. So slot capable, yes, but probably more of an outside guy. It could make sense. I'll say, looking at those stats from 22, he can't play the slot. I mean, you can't play 500 snaps in the slot and not play the slot. So disproven notion right there. So he can, but again, I look at Darious Williams and say, could be a good fit, just a little bit of an odd scheme fit, because one thing I do know is the Jaguars run a ton of zone, and they did run a ton of zone last year. So I guess we'll see. I don't know. Maybe the Steelers do want to mix and match more. I mean, Patrick Peterson wasn't like a perfect glove fit with Joey Porter Jr. either, but they didn't know they were going to have Joey Porter Jr. So it could be a little different.
Yeah, and you're right in the ilk of receiver that I think that they're looking to start bringing in, like Joey Porter Jr., Darius Rush, Corey Trice. I just think when you look at what they had last year with their personnel, they couldn't necessarily do exactly what they wanted. I don't think that you're going to see them bring in more guys of the Levi Wallace or Patrick Peterson mold. I think you're going to see more guys like Joey Porter Jr.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, when you didn't have speed last year, you can't play man. They were not fast.
Yeah, they didn't have the personnel to do it.
Yeah, they didn't have it. I mean, they weren't fast at all at safety or at corner. So they had to play a lot of zone.
I think it was you that mentioned it, like the amount of explosive plays they were giving up, but it wasn't like they were getting the top taken off. They were just getting stretched from sideline to sideline and not able to, take the right. They didn't have the speed to catch up to guys.
Yeah, they didn't have the speed to corral them after the catch. That's what it
Yeah.
was. I mean, that's a big issue when you're a team because you can't be giving up 5-yard drags that turn from 5 yards and maybe work 10-yard gains into 30-yard gains. But that was what was happening to the Steelers last year. And not only were those guys not fast, they weren't good tacklers when they even made it there. So it was a huge issue. And that's why the secondary needs to be repurposed because you can't have slow guys that can't tackle in about 4 of the 6 key parts of your defensive backfield. It's not tenable. And so, that happens. And then, tight ends are gashing you because you don't have a guy that's size or fast enough to kind of match them. That's the defensive backfield was a huge issue last year with their lack of speed. So Williams is a cool little fit in that regard because even though he's 30, it really doesn't show up that he has lost speed. So would be interested there, but this draft class, man, has some freaks in it. Quinyon Mitchell ran really well. Terrion
Yes.
Arnold is pretty fast on film. Nate Wiggins obviously runs the gas get off sub 4.3. So there are fast guys in this class if the Steelers want it. But also I think free agency has the route for where they can go and address one of outside or slot and then come back in the draft and address the other.
Yeah, absolutely. Corner's a really good spot in this draft. Wide receiver as well. And we touched on the receivers last week just because we thought it was so interesting, the Steelers' interest at the top of the draft. But that's not where I want to talk about receiver spot today for the Steelers because Steelers apparently very interested in bringing Allen Robinson back next season at a reduced cost. Obviously, like when you looked at what that cap it was going to be, no way. I mean, there can't be a single person that's on board with him coming back at that cap hit. But at a reduced cost, Nick, like, does it make sense? Because, you talked about what you look for in receivers within Arthur Smith's offense. He's a good blocker. They utilized him in a lot of those ways last year. They certainly could use his veteran leadership with that room. So where are you at with Allen Robinson, or do you just have no interest in him being back regardless of what the cost is?
Well, I saw Allen in Indianapolis because he was out there, and this is where the meeting reportedly took place. Didn't know why he was there. Turns out he was doing some media stuff. One of those, players that is still active that gets invited to do some media for Super Bowl Combine draft, etc. Was interesting though that he was out there. And it's pretty clear that they might want him back, but I don't really have much confidence in it actually working out. For one thing, Allen Robinson is a guy that I don't know what reduced salary they're going to come to, but like, dude, it should be honestly the vet min. Like, he did not give them much more than the vet min last year.
I agree.
Like, sure, if he wants to come back on the vet min and just wants to be this blocking receiver, like, go for it. But he's going to have to be wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4. It's pretty clear, like, from what we were seeing in the combine, they wanted to get a receiver. Like, I think it's pretty clear the Steelers are going to be drafting a receiver pretty early in this draft, Smitty. Like, I think that was the biggest takeaway for me from Combine Week. When I talked to people, that was like a pretty common sentiment too, is like Steelers are probably going to add a receiver pretty early, even though Arthur Smith's scheme only needs really 2. It's kind of interesting to me. But yeah, Allen Robinson, great blocker, great locker room guy, does what he needs for the team, but did not do much last year for them in terms of actual on the field production. So, if the pay cut's like vet man, I mean, I'm cool with it. I'm just not sure Allen's going to go for it.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that is a large drop from what he's supposed to be making in 2024. But it's hard to envision what that scenario looks like coming all the way from $10+ million to the vet min. For one season. But hey, I mean, if he wants to play football for the Steelers in 2024, I don't know, what his options are beyond that.
Yeah, I don't know what the options are, how much of a market he would have in free agency. I mean, listen, we're talking about a guy that has done almost everything monetarily in terms of the football game. Like, he has made a lot of money with Chicago, went to LA, made more money. Like, he is a guy that has been there, done that, been at the top of the game. So sometimes these guys, when you come down on the back end of your career and you have to accept a new role, it's not that he won't accept the new role. It's that at some point, the wear and tear of the game on your body is just not worth it, right? You have made so much money at some point. So do you want to keep playing for this reduced cost? I don't know what Allen's going to want to do in that regard, but I get the mindset. I've already made my money. It's not worth playing on the vet min anymore. You know, Allen Robinson is going to be 30 years old here soon. He's played in the NFL. He is 30 years old. He just turned 30 last year. So, like, he's going to have to, he's going to be a guy that is going to feel the effects more and more on his body. He's going to feel it more and more as he gets older. So some of these guys just say at that point it's not worth it anymore when you're not getting paid that high amount. But hey, if he wants to come back on the vet min, I think it's worth it because you clear out the cap space, and he's a good blocker and he's a great locker room guy. So I think it could be worth that. And also, if he comes on the vet min, it doesn't preclude you from adding someone or drafting someone.
I know we wanted to talk about, Dane Brugler put out his mock draft, had him trading up for Marius Mims, but I feel like we can kind of tie that discussion in with the questions we got because somebody actually mentioned the exact opposite scenario of that. Is it possible for a trade down in the first round with a team like Tampa Bay, Buffalo, Arizona, maybe even you gain more draft picks? But let's talk about the Brugler thing first, going up for Marius Mims, a player heavily connected to the Steelers, and he does what he does at the combine. Obviously suffered a little bit of an injury, but doesn't sound like it's to be too bad. Should still be able to go at his pro day. Where are you at with the Marius Mims? Where does he rank in this tackle class for you if you've already done that? And does he fit what the Steelers are looking for and need?
You haven't really done my full rankings yet,
Okay.
so I don't know, but I think I prefer him to a few of these guys. Listen, Amarius Mims, people will always talk about the injuries and the lack of play. I get it. It's a concern. The guy's been hurt a lot. But how much of that is him actually being hurt a lot? Does he just get hurt on, I don't know, let's say doing a kick step and then coming up lame? Or does he actually just have really bad luck? Like sometimes a lot of these injury prone guys just have bad luck. And some of it isn't really actually because they're more injury prone. But more than that, dude, you would think this guy's raw. Like he's not. Like he's polished. His
Right.
pass pro is awesome. I think his run game stuff needs a little bit more work, but it's real good still. Like top 10 player if he plays the normal amount of games to me. He's a top 10 player. Probably going to be my OT 3 or 2 if I'm going to guess. Like he's up there with it. I like this guy better than Latham. I like this guy better, I think, than Fuaga. Like I really do in terms of just tape. Like just tape, I think I like him better than them. But I understand the outside noise because of the injuries, the lack of play, the lack of tape. It's concerning. But dude, the tape that we have, the 8 games of tape we have, that Ohio State game in particular, it's some of the best tape in the class at tackle. And so you're talking about a guy that, honestly, if you told me like 5 years from now that Amarius Mims was a top 5 tackle in the NFL, I wouldn't be shocked. Like he is, that's the type of tape we're talking about here. Great athlete. You saw the athleticism on display before he ironically pulled his hamstring at the combine. His pass pro is so good. And the reason why his pass pro is so good is because the feet are married to his hands. He's got great hand usage, so you don't have to coach that up. He can mix his sets. He's an independent hand user, so that's exactly what Pat Meyer likes. Georgia fits what Pat Meyer really likes to do. So those guys can really plug and play right into the scheme, and the teaching's not too different from what Pat Meyer taught. The tape, man, it's so good. If Amarius Mims stays on the football field, and the Steelers got him at 16 overall and traded up and only traded away their third, still got a fourth back, and he hits, like, I'm telling you, no one would be complaining about it.
Sure. My question to you, I think to your point, if you didn't mention it, I was going to mention this because watching him, despite only playing 8 games, I think the pass pro is certainly more advanced than Broderick was coming in. I think that we thought that was going to be a project. So my question is, how long do you think it would be before he could get on to an NFL field? Like, obviously, that is going to be independent from how the Steelers feel, but like your mindset with it, like how long do you think it would be?
Week 1.
Okay.
I would start Marius Mims right away. He's polished enough to play week 1. He's more polished than Broderick was coming out for sure. Like it's not really that close. Broderick was pretty raw. Broderick was a really good run blocker though. That was one thing Broderick really was. It had some rawness and pass pro, which we saw manifest itself over the year last year. But Mims is not raw and pass pro. He's not. And to me, a rookie tackle, if you're going to play really early, being less raw and pass pro is a better formula than being raw in say pass pro. Because if you are polished in pass pro, you can at least protect the quarterback. It's such a pass heavy league right now. Steelers are a bit of an interesting team just because Arthur Smith runs the ball so much. But I still think, Mims could play there week one right away, especially for the Steelers because Dan Moore Jr., we've seen the tape. It's not very good, Smitty, unfortunately. Dan Moore kind of did everything he could this year, but not good tape. And
I mean,
be back
cap tip to him as a 4th-round guy that came in and, has played the amount of games that he has for the Steelers. But, yeah, it certainly needs to be upgraded upon sooner
needs to
than later.
And so, that not only to me would move Broderick back to left tackle, which is important, but it would give you an upgrade overall on the line. So I think Amarius Mims would be awesome. And trading up in general is kind of just an interesting discussion, I think, because of the teams that are in their area. Jacksonville, Seattle, Rams, Bengals have a lot of similar needs to what the Steelers need, like centers, tackles, guards. So corners, not guards, corners is what I meant. So those 3 positions is kind of interesting. Because if the Steelers want to go up and get a Mims or a Quinyon Mitchell or a Brugler's mock, Terrion Arnold was there when they traded up. So they want to go up and get him. They could go up, 2, 3, 4 spots and jump those teams and go get one of those guys.
Sure. And then I mentioned the trade down scenario, which I'll be interested to see. If this regime is a group that does that in the 1st round. We saw them do it obviously in the 3rd round to get a 4th back after moving that 4th to move up for Broderick last year. But in round 1, are they going to be a team that has the willingness to move back? I think that it's interesting. Let me lay out a scenario for you where I'd be curious to get your thoughts if they should even do something like this. But say Jackson Powers Johnson is off the board and they really like the centers and, take it what you will, the interest that they seem to show at the combine and stuff. But say Jackson Powers Johnson's off the board. They really like Zach Frazier. Not sure if they should take him at 20. They move down, regain another day 2 pick, and then take Zach Frazier somewhere in that 28 to 32 range with the team that traded up. What are your thoughts on that and just the idea of trading down in general?
Wouldn't stun me. I could see them doing it. It's not a great depth group. The depth of the class kind of stinks. So if you're gonna trade back,
after round 4, man, it's
But if you trade back, to 30 or 29, you might net a 3rd. So cool, you get another day 2 pick. So I think that's not a bad idea. And Frazier's, as we've kind of talked about before, in that real odd space between 20 and 50. One. I don't see him falling all the way to them in the 2nd. It just seems very far-fetched to me. Too many teams need a center. It's just too many teams need a center. Now, we'll get more clarity on which teams need a center because it's also a really good free agency class at the position. So there is that. But yeah, I could see them doing that. I could also see them, and we've mentioned this before, sticking at 20 and then trading up from 51 to go get Zach Frazier in the 2nd round. So we'll kind of see what happens there. I'm still not sure what they're going to do center. I don't know if they're going to draft one. I don't know if they're going to sign one. I think it's a real interesting discussion. But I'm pretty sure they're going to sign an inside linebacker. I think they're going to sign a corner. So center might be the biggest need in the draft.
You know what? Great segue there, because another question we had from my guy JB here is top 3 realistic free agents you think the Steelers can sign. And then another part of this independent thought, what prospect at the combine impressed you the most? And I'll actually let you start with that one there because you were actually at the combine. So not necessarily fair for me to answer.
Yeah. So, guys that impressed me at the combine the most. That's an interesting question. Mainly because I thought going into this, most of the guys that tested freakily were going to test freakily. So, Quinyon Mitchell running a 4.33 is okay, yeah, freaky, but he's 4.3 on tape, so it's not crazy.
Yeah.
I'll tell you the guy that really stuck out to me in a big way. And I didn't expect him to completely blow up the combine numbers, but it was Troy Fatatu out of Washington. Like
Yep.
34.5-inch arms. Like, that's a tackle, dude. Like, that's a tackle to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it
Yeah.
was real big, in my opinion, to getting the Steelers another tackle option. Like, Fataanu to me fits what they like. So he's a potential option to be a tackle for them at 20. And he looked fluid. He moved like a tight end at times. I thought he was awesome when you watched him at the combine. So big thumbs up to me for Troy Fatanu. Braden Fiskey, I think, is another one. I don't know how you
Yeah.
could have been impressed by Braden
Yeah.
Fiskey. He just, dude, he lit the world on fire. And then another one that I'm going to shout out just for because he's one of my guys is Isaac Guerendo, running back out of Louisville. Dude, they need if they want to get a late day 3 running back, like this should be the guy. He is such a wide zone running back. He is a Shanahan running back that was created in a lab. If Kyle Shanahan went to a computer and said, build me the perfect Shanahan running back, Isaac Guerendo would pop out of it. And they obviously need, in my opinion, a designated wide zone runner at some point on this team, just because I don't think Jaylen or Najee are perfect wide zone runners. And plus, they do
Yeah.
need some running back 3 just because we don't know if Najee or Jaylen are going to be as healthy as they were last year. Neither of them missed a game last year. So that's something to prepare for too. Guerendo would be awesome with like that 6th round pick, but I'm not sure. I think after the combine, he might have gone up the board a little too much, unfortunately.
Sure.
So those were like just a few guys to me that fit. Now, the free agent part of it.
Yeah.
I want to talk about a few free agents realistically that they can sign. Julian Blackman is number 1 because I think they can realistically sign this guy. At linebacker, Tyrell Dodson. That's one of my answers. At
Unbelievable.
linebacker, I like Tyrell Dodson.
I was sitting here on Spot Track and I'm like, I was picking a linebacker, I was picking a defensive back, and then I was gonna pick a cornerback, and you just took my linebacker. So
Tyrell
now I gotta
Dodson,
figure out
dude, is like
okay, I could see like a Denzel Perryman too.
yeah.
But
I mean, but they don't need another hammer. They need a guy that's a little bit
sure.
more, fluid in coverage. Dodson proved he could be more this year with the Bills. Took on more when Milano went down. He's a nice player, man. He's probably not going to break the bank. Might cost you like 2 years, 10, 2 years, 9, something like that. It'll be a good contract that they could really plop in there. Well, and then my other guy that I would put in the realistic signing category is Noah Brown, and wide receiver. I'm just a real big fan of him in the Arthur Smith scheme. You look at his yards per average last year was like 18 yards. Didn't play a ton because he got hurt a bit last year too, but would have been very productive had he. I think he played 10 games. He's a really good player. He's a guy that can vertically stretch the field. He's a great blocker. I think that's what really fits here. You can put him in the reduced splits, trust him to block. So I'm a big fan of that because I really, really look at what Noah Brown does, and the scheme fits just perfect. So those are 3 realistic guys I think they could send.
I changed my mind on the linebacker. I'm going with Drew Tranquill coming off his year with Kansas City. I got to do it. I'm going to go with Jordan Whitehead as the safety. No, actually, I think I'll throw a center in there. And I know that there's been a lot of talk about this. Aaron Brewer.
Yeah. Brewer's interesting. Bad in pass pro, but great run blocking.
I agree.
So could they mask
I don't know
him?
that I'd necessarily be pushing for it. I'm just saying I think it makes sense.
Yeah, I Brewer's an interesting player there. Receiver is always so interesting to me too in this free agency because meeting with Rome Odunze and then being called a trade up option is so funny to me. Because
I don't know how you're doing this. And are you looking at Twitter when you're talking?
I am not.
Okay. So Drew said, "What are your thoughts on the Steelers meeting with Rome? The league seems to love him, and it would likely require a significant trade up to get him. You take any stock in the fact they still wanted to meet with him despite that?"
Yeah, I was trying to say like receivers so interesting because I think I want them to sign Noah Brown, but then they go out and they're like Rome Odunze, and I was like, wow, you should trade up for Rome Odunze, right? Now, I love Rome Odunze. He's special with his ball skills. He separates. He's going to be a special player and probably will be wide receiver 1 in just about every other class that doesn't possess Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors. But here's the thing. He's going to go top 10, man. Like, he's going to go to the Bears. He's going to go somewhere in there. Like, what's the furthest Rome Odunze is going to fall? It's not very far. they're going to have to trade up significantly. And receiver is a need, but is it a need to where you want to go up 7-8 spots, maybe give up next year's one? Like, I don't think so, man. Like, I love
I think
Rome
you said the
Odunze.
floor. I think you said the floor at 9. Like, because you got the Chargers at 5 could certainly do it. The Giants at 6 could certainly do it. Titans at 7. We'll see what the plan is with Brian Callahan. That offense is going to be completely different. They could do it. I don't know. I mean, and then
Like,
Chicago
I
at
mean,
9.
dude, like, the floor has to be like, if we're talking floor, 15 to the Colts is the furthest he will fall,
Yeah.
period. I don't think he
Yeah.
even gets there.
Right.
So like, yeah, I mean, if he gets like to 14, I think at that point you maybe you're thinking about it because that point it's like, okay, probably won't cost us next year's one. It'll cost us a decent bit, but we can go up and get a special talent. So I could see that being a consideration, but like,
McVay is a sicko, by the way, for meeting with Rome, because that I
yes,
would be so, and especially if he starts to slide like you're talking about, they pick it what, like
19.
19? Yeah, they're right in front of the Steelers, so they could certainly be a trade up option too. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, that's possible. I love the player. I'm just not sure it
yeah.
matches with value and need right now. When I'm looking
Mhm.
at it. Now, maybe when we come out of free agency, we can talk about receivers like a top 2 or 3 need, and it makes more sense. That's
Sure.
possible, where they maybe get corner addressed and safety and
Mhm.
linebacker and all that. It could happen. But right now, when I'm standing here and you need a tackle, a center, a corner, a safety, a linebacker, probably another D lineman, and a
Mhm.
receiver, and then you got to figure out what you're doing a quarterback on top of that. It's hard for me to say trade up for the stud receiver. Um, so I would love a Dunze. And if they trade up for Rome Odunze and your wide receivers were legitimately, even if it's just probably for 1 year, were George Pickens, Deontay Johnson, and Rome Odunze, Arthur Smith, get ready to learn the drop back passing game out of 11 personnel, buddy.
There we go. You mentioned corner there. Nick asked, who will be playing corner opposite JPJ week 1? Rookie or free agent signing? What's your guess?
I'm assuming they're going to sign somebody that's on the cheaper side. Darious Williams can
Mhm.
make sense. Who will be the corner? Huh. Sean Murphy Bunting makes a lot of sense to me
I love yep,
as a
I
free
love it.
agent. Maybe him. If they draft a guy in the first round, I'm thinking Quignon's going to be gone. Terrion's going to be gone.
Mhm.
Kool-Aid would probably be the likeliest guy to me.
Yeah.
DeJean's interesting because while he is a monster in terms of athleticism and will probably play literally everywhere on the field, outside he's probably just a cover 3 guy. Now they can run a lot of cover 3 with Joey, and they do. But I don't know what their sub package DB situation is going to look like. And I'm imagining them signing a corner, keeping Pat Pete or something like that will probably make that a little less likely. And plus, I think DeJean might be gone. And then I just don't know with Wiggins. Like, he's 173 pounds if they're going to draft a corner at
Yeah.
173. That just doesn't seem like something they would do. So Kool-Aid, who has become extremely underrated to me, and it's worth the 20th overall pick, might be the guy in the draft. Through free agency, you know, I mean, I'm gonna say the most likely option if they're going just affordable was probably someone like Darius Williams or Sean Murphy Bunting. I think that makes sense.
Let me throw something out to you. This is totally throwing something against the wall. Um, Dane Jackson.
I mean, that's just Levi Wallace.
And here's the reason. You bring in Dane Jackson and him, Darius Rush, Corey Trice, they all compete for that other outside spot, and then you bring in a starting nickel and like Mike Sanderstill or somebody that you draft.
I mean, maybe I could see it. I'm just not sure he's a guy that like fixes what they need. I'm not sure he fixes it. He feels
Yeah, I
like a
mean,
real
that's what I'm saying. Like, I think this is going the route of, a cheaper option on the outside, like that has started. They've obviously tried to push him out in Buffalo, and then he had to end up playing again because of the injury to Trey White. So, and all the other
yeah.
injuries they suffered in the back end.
I mean, it could.
And this is again not me like hoping this happens. I just came up with that scenario in my head.
Yeah, I could see it happening. I'm just not sure that it's 100% going to be like a perfect fit for them. Again, a guy, he played obviously a lot of man in college, and they do
Mhm.
it as well in Buffalo. So I understand the scheme fit for what they want to do there. I gotta think they shoot a little higher than that. Like
I would hope so. This is
right.
like, again, like the idea, at least in my mind, would be you have a higher hope that Trice or Rush win the job, but you have Dane Jackson here in case neither of them do.
Yeah, I think like Dane Jackson's a solid player, but has athletic limitations. Like he doesn't make the
Mhm.
team
Sure.
faster. Like if you're gonna get a cheap corner, get Murphy Bunting, who can really, Sean Murphy
I'm
Bunting
I'm
is a guy that
I'm a
is a
big fan of
ball
Murphy Bunting.
hawk, and like he can run. Like
I wanted
there's
to trade for him last year, but
yeah, he would have been an interesting trade candidate. So
mhm,
like Murphy Bunting's an interesting player because he's a guy that can run. I think he was like 4.44, maybe two. Yeah, he's 4.42. Okay, I found it. 4.42 coming out of college, still young, productive. Probably had the best year of his career last year, or at least one of them. So I would be cool with that. Um,
mhm.
unless you're signing like a real needle mover, you're probably going to draft one anyways. Unless you're like trading for Snead, like that's something you're probably going to do. So I don't know. I'd go more in that tier up from Dane Jackson, and make it and at least make a guy that's really athletic an offer there.
Sure. Okay. And then last one here from Kai. What does Jaylen Warren do better than Najee, and also vice versa? I think that's an interesting question. Looking at the strengths of each of them and why they complement each other so well. Nick, what do you think the reason is?
I don't really know. First of all, Najee was like better at outside zone than Warren was by yards per carry average. Like that was a little surprising. But Derek
Hmm.
went into the research and found that like Najee's like a full yard per carry more productive than Jalen Warren is on wide zone, which is why I think they might have kept Pat Meyer and Eddie Faulkner a little bit, which is part of it to keep that gap stuff going. I tend to think because of the screen game, the involvement Smith at least does with running backs out of the backfield, I tend to think Jalen Warren should have a really good year in this offense as long as they don't spam wide zone. Um, so I think Jalen should have like a better natural fit, but man, Najee's a hammer to a nail. Like he is a perfect fit too. So both these guys are great fits. So the answer is probably both. Like both of them should have a really good year. But if we're talking about a totality of guys that should be, productive, the receiving game should be expanded for Jalen. So I'd say Jalen might,
Hmm.
might have a real big year next year just because he's going to be involved on both the ground and through the air.
Yeah, I mean, just in terms of the strengths of each of them and what one does that the other one can't. I mean, I think they're vastly different players. Like, I think that's why I know that the Thunder and Lightning thing gets a little played out, but I'm not saying Najee could probably be utilized more in the run or the pass game than he has. I mean, what did he catch? Like 80 some passes his first year, and then obviously hasn't had to take on that role since. But like what Jalen's able to do with the ball in his hands after he catches the ball, I mean, I don't know if that's something that I'm really looking at Najee to do at this point, with the tread that's been on his tires. Obviously, Najee's the better downhill runner. I don't know. I mean, certainly they complement each other very well. Do you think, Nick, that say you take Najee Harris away from the Steelers, that Jaylen Warren could still be as impactful?
Yeah, I think it could still be a great back. I hate not using the running back by committee thing. It is the norm in the NFL today. You should be
Hmm.
having two backs that could
I
play at a
agree.
level. But could he be a guy that could shoulder a load for a few games or a season if Najee got hurt in like the preseason? Yes, he could. There's nothing that tells me Jalen can't do that. I don't know why that's a notion. He could pass protect. He can catch the ball in the backfield. He's a very durable runner. Like he can
Pass
do it,
protections.
man. He
Yeah.
can he can do it absolutely. Yes. Um, do I ideally want him doing it? No. But yes,
Yeah.
Jalen Warren could be a three down
We've
running
seen him
back.
run between the tackles. There's like people that say that too. Like he's not just a traditional between the tackles runner. I mean,
He's a very physical between
yeah,
the tackles runner. Like he plays with reckless abandonment. He's a
yeah.
guy that could
It
absolutely
seems like people have, for whatever reason, I don't know how it got created, have this notion in their mind that he is just like the old school third down back, where all they are is like a pass catcher. I'm not sure how that got labeled to him, but
I don't know how that happened either. He is not a third, like yes, he's got a great third down back skill set. He can catch the ball, he's
Mm-hmm.
good in space, breaks tackles, can obviously blow the socks off an edge rusher or a linebacker. I get it. Watch his tape running between the tackles. Like, it is good. We're talking about a guy that was better on gap concepts than zone concepts. Like, we're talking about a guy that legitimately was better on runs that were designed to hit between the B and the A gap. What do you mean he's not a good in between the tackles runner? He's a great in between the tackles runner. Honestly, like, Jaylen's tape and production is better in between the tackles than it is outside the tackle. Like, that's wild, but it's true.
Sure.
And so, yeah, I don't understand that notion at all. The Steelers have two backs that can handle a workhorse load, but by them not doing that, they are extending both careers, and that's a big thing.
Sure. Great point. All right, Nick, that will do it. Great episode, great conversation, really good stuff. Tell the people they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me on X at Farabaugh Make sure to read SoSnow.com, subscribe to the YouTube channel, do all that great stuff, guys.
There we go. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Hit us with some questions for when Alan Saunders is back on the show. Who knows when that? Hey, you never know what's going to happen. Although you can tell by the intro, if you don't hear the voiceover and it's just the regular instrumental, it's going to be me and either Nick or Derek on the show. So that'll be your telltale for going forward. But yeah, like, subscribe, notification bell, hit us in the comments, leave us a 5-star review if you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. I am Zachary Smith, PGH, for Nick Farabaugh and myself. Thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.